Welcome to Hockey Whiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be talking about my observations in the quarterfinals of the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs. In this podcast, I talk about some of my observations about the games played so far in the quarterfinals of the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Eastern Conference matchups. In the series between the Florida Panthers and Washington Capitals, Sergei Bobrovsky has been lights out and has been the Florida Panthers' best player. The line combos for Florida's top 9 is constantly changing, and they have so many different combinations of players they can throw at the Capitals. This versatility in their top 9 really gives them a supreme advantage. Florida's defense has been very active and is always jumping up into the play. This makes it tough for the Capitals to defend, especially with the high-end skill the Panthers have on offense. Like all season long, the Lundell line was excellent and outproduced Washington's third line. Alex Ovechkin has been very noticeable in both games, making his presence felt whenever he is on the ice, whether it's with his big shot or a big hit. The Tom Wilson injury causes a huge issue for the Capitals because it pushes TJ Oshie up to the second line and Garnet Hathaway to the third line. Wilson is a tough player to replace because of what he brings with his skill and his physical play, and he is also a major part of their success. Anthony Mantha has been very physical in this series. He already has 14 hits in 2 games, which is good for the team lead in hits. There is already a goalie controversy again in Washington, as Vitek Vanacek was chased from Game 2 after allowing 5 goals on 19 shots. This series has the potential to go 7 games, as both teams have shown that they can dominate at times, but at the same time, they both have weaknesses which the other team can capitalize on. In the series between the Carolina Hurricanes and Boston Bruins, Carolina has flat out dominated the series, outscoring the Bruins 10-3 in the first 2 games. Is that they won Game 2 in a dominant fashion despite having Antti Raanta knocked out of the game and having to go with the third-string goalie, Peter Kochetkov. The Canes are not only an excellent defensive team, they have proven to be as opportunistic as they come, capitalizing on all the scoring chances they get. It is not often that the Bergeron line gets outplayed. They have been smothered by one of the best checking lines in the NHL, centered by Jordan Staal. Despite being outshot by the Bruins in both games, Carolina found a way to maintain their defensive structure through it all and frustrate the Bruins by clogging the neutral zone and taking away time and space from their star players. Boston's weakness has been exposed in this series, the lack of depth scoring. This was known all along, but it was even more obvious in this series because they did not get any production from any other player outside of their top 6. Linus Ullmark was okay the first 2 games, but he didn't exactly do anything to make it tough for Carolina to score either. For that reason, Boston will turn to Jeremy Swayman in Game 3. Boston is looking old, and at times it seems hard for them to generate any type of offensive chances due to the fact they struggle handling the faster and younger Carolina Hurricanes. What happened in the regular season between the 2 teams carried over to the postseason, as the Hurricanes continued their dominance over the Bruins. If the Bruins can't turn it around, it will be a short series. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at HockeyWiz777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on anchor.fm/HockeyWiz777scouting. In the series between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Tampa Bay Lightning, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner are having a fantastic start to the series. The two have combined for 4 goals and 10 points in 2 games. Toronto seems like a much deeper team than in years prior, and have a better defense with the addition of Mark Giordano. Jack Campbell is having a good series thus far. He had a shutout in Game 1, then gave up 5 goals on 34 shots in Game 2. Toronto is taking too many penalties. They took 5 in Game 1, but Tampa just didn't capitalize on them. Then they took 5 again in Game 2. Tampa scored 3 of their 5 goals on the power play in Game 2. The Leafs simply just can't keep taking 5 penalties a game, or else Tampa will make them pay. Toronto played well at home, where they can get the matchups they want, but let's see how they perform when the series shifts to Tampa. Tampa Bay's superstars played awful in Game 1, as Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, and Hedman had lousy games and made sloppy passes all game long. They bounced back with a strong performance in Game 2, with Hedman leading the way with 1 goal and 3 assists. Kucherov also had a goal and 2 assists, redeeming himself for his terrible Game 1 performance. Tampa's game plan is clearly to play Toronto physical, as they had 56 hits in Game 1 and 39 hits in Game 2. The Lightning are the bigger and more physical team, so it would be to their advantage to try and engage the Maple Leafs in physical play, because the Leafs are not built to play physical. Andrei Vasilevskiy has not been as dominant as he was last season, but nonetheless, he is still a goalie that has proven himself in the league and has led his team to consecutive championships. This series looks like a 7-game series, and it should be a good one. In the series between the New York Rangers and Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Rangers were bailed out big time by Igor Shesterkin, who showed why he should be the Vezina Trophy winner. Shesterkin faced 83 shots in the triple overtime Game 1 loss, where he made 79 saves and gave his team every chance to win the game. Then in Game 2, he stopped 39 of 41 shots to lead the Rangers to victory. Adam Fox really showed out in this series and proved to the world why he should be in the Norris Trophy conversation as well. The two trade deadline acquisitions, Andrew Copp and Frank Vatrano, have already proven to be huge additions. These two players have made the Rangers' top 9 extremely lethal and more balanced. Gerard Gallant has done it again. He has taken a team that had little to no direction and turned it into a legit contender right away. For this, he should be talked about as one of the best coaches in the league. What can you say about Sidney Crosby that hasn't already been said? He has been the Penguins' best player in this series by far and has generated scoring chances whenever he is on the ice. His line alongside Jake Guentzel and Brian Rust have scored 4 of the Penguins' 6 goals in the series so far. Evgeny Malkin has not been impressive in this series and has been very quiet outside of scoring that goal in triple overtime, who looks old and useless when he's on the ice. Malkin's wingers have not given him help whatsoever. Maybe they should move Evan Rodriguez and Brock McGinn up to his line, which would bump Danton Heinen and Kasperi Kapanen to the Carter line. The deep pair of Michael Matheson and Chris Letang needs to be broken up. They should put Brian Dumoulin back with Chris Letang and pair Matheson with John Marino. This also drops Marcus Pettersson to the third pair with Chad Ruhwedel. The Penguins are on their third string goalie, Louis Domingue, so they need to tighten up in front of him defensively if they want to win the series. This has been the best series in the Eastern Conference in my opinion, and it has potential to be a 7-game series. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywiztalkshockey.blogspot.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at hockeywiz777. Western Conference matchups. In the series between the Colorado Avalanche and Nashville Predators, Colorado has flat out dominated this series, and there is no other way to put it. They blew out Nashville Game 1 and had scored 5 goals before the end of the first period, which chased David Rittich from the game. Nashville had a much better effort in Game 2, behind a stellar 49 save performance from Connor Ingram, who stood on his head and gave the Preds a chance to win the game. Colorado's top players were dominant. McKinnon and Makar have combined for 5 goals and 8 points in the first 2 games of this series. When watching Colorado play Nashville, it is apparent that their skill and speed is overwhelming for Nashville, and if their goalie doesn't stand on his head, every game could result in a blowout. Darcy Kuemper was great in goal. He stopped 23 of 25 shots in Game 1, then stopped 25 of 26 shots in Game 2, coming up big when he needed to be. Nashville may have made the wrong decision going with David Rittich for Game 1, because the game was over before it started. From when Connor Ingram took over for David Rittich in Game 1, he faced 83 shots and stopped 79 of them. This gives him a 2.29 GAA and .952 save percentage. While Nashville might still have lost the 2 games with Ingram in goal, at least the games would have still been competitive and not a blowout. Nashville's defense is still too loose for my liking, and they overload too much, which leaves the backdoor wide open. This is playing with fire against a team like Colorado, as they don't need many chances to score. The Preds need to start giving their goaltender some offensive support. Otherwise, it will be tough to win a game. Nashville is just not good enough to beat Colorado in a best-of-7 series, and I expect Colorado to either sweep or gentlemen sweep them. In the series between the Calgary Flames and Dallas Stars, the Calgary Flames were dominant in Game 1 and shut out the Stars by a score of 1-0. An area of concern for Calgary is that they have yet to score a goal-even strength, which is something to monitor moving forward. Johnny Gaudreau is under the microscope right now. He has underperformed in the playoffs, and he has yet to do anything this playoffs to prove otherwise. Jacob Markstrom has been excellent so far for Calgary, He had a shutout in Game 1 and only allowed 1 goal on 22 shots in Game 2. Calgary is actually getting great looks and good scoring chances, but they just can't beat Jake Ottinger, who has been stellar in goal for Dallas. Calgary's lack of scoring depth is apparent, as they really don't get any scoring from their bottom 6. Dallas, for some reason, always seems to give Calgary some trouble in the playoffs. No matter what the odds say, or how much the experts are favoring Calgary, or how much the experts are favoring Calgary, Dallas has found ways to keep games close and had every opportunity to win both games. Joe Pavelski may be 37, but he continues to be the Stars' most consistent player in the playoffs and is still ultra reliable. Ryan Suter has helped the D-Corps out big time, as his playoff experience and leadership has really helped out the D-Corps. Some of Dallas's role players, like Michael Raffl and Luke Glendening, have stepped up and have become vital pieces of their PK. If Jake Ottinger continues to play like the way he has so far in this series, Dallas could shock the world and upset the heavily favored Calgary Flames. This series seems like a low-scoring, tight-checking affair, and it could be a 7-game series, with neither team really dominating a game. Listen to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my YouTube channel, Lucas Aoyang. In the series against the Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues, Minnesota showed the ability to bounce back after a disastrous Game 1 performance. After being shut out in Game 1, 4-0, Minnesota won Game 2 decisively, 6-2, getting a hat-trick from Kirill Kaprizov and 2 goals from Joel Eriksson-Ek. The X factor for Minnesota in this series is the line centered by Joel Eriksson-Ek. While that line may not get the media attention and adoration of fans, that line is ultra reliable and thrives in the playoffs. Minnesota may not look that impressive on paper, but when you watch the games, you understand why they have been so successful. They play as a team, are sound defensively, and are backstopped by a future Hall of Famer in Marc-Andre Fleury. St. Louis has one of the hottest lines in the NHL coming into the playoffs, which was centered by Robert Thomas, flanked by Pavel Buchnevich and Vladimir Tarasenko. David Perron had a hat-trick in Game 1, Ryan O'Reilly had a goal and an assist, and Torrey Krug had 3 assists as well in a 4-0 St. Louis win. As I said in my preview, St. Louis is a very streaky team. There are 2 versions of this team: the team that scores and plays very well defensively, and the one that doesn't score and is a mess defensively. The loss of Nick Leddy on the blue line is a huge loss for them, because it forces them to play Calle Rosen on the third D pair with Robert Bortuzzo. Ville Husso has been okay thus far, but we will need to continue monitoring this goalie situation and see if any changes made in net after the Game 2 loss. This series has a little bit of everything, and it looks like it should be a 7-game series. In the series between the Edmonton Oilers and LA Kings, Mike Smith made a critical mistake in Game 1, which ultimately cost his team Game 1. However, he bounced back in a big way in Game 2, notching a shutout, making 30 saves to clinch his first win in 10 playoff starts. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl have been as advertised, combining for 3 goals and 6 points in the first 2 games. For the first time in a long time, Edmonton has gotten secondary scoring. They had secondary scoring from Evander Kane, who had 3 points in Game 2, Kyle Yamamoto, who had 1 goal and 1 assist in the series, and Evan Bouchard, who has chipped in offensively with 3 points in 2 games. Ryan McLeod's line with Zach Kassian and Warren Foegele created real problems for the Kings' 4th line, and that is a matchup to monitor moving forward. The addition of Duncan Keith on the blue line has had a real impact on the team and in the locker room. That playoff experience is irreplaceable. Philip Deneau's line with Trevor Moore and Alex Iafallo was a real problem for the Oilers in Game 1. The Kings let the game get away from them in Game 2, as the young players' inexperience proved to be very costly. LA hopes to get Victor Arvidsson back for Game 3. As well as Iafallo played in Game 1, he is very inconsistent and not reliable as a scorer in the playoffs. Arvidsson is the type of player who has proven to elevate his play in the playoffs and can score big-time goals. I said it in my preview, and I'll say it now. The absence of Drew Doughty will prove to be too much for the Kings to overcome because Doughty does so much for them in all situations and has played in so many big games for them. That type of experience is irreplaceable. Jonathan Quick is actually playing very well in net for LA, but the defense in front of him is just making too many mistakes due to the fact that they are very young. Edmonton has the advantage in this series because of their star power and because the Kings really don't have a shutdown defenseman anymore. In my next podcast, I preview the second round of the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs.